Hello, it's 9 p.m. in RTD. It's time to English New Edition for tonight headlines. We have the head of state sponsors the closing ceremony of the National Disability Week. For the international scene, England deconfines and return to regional restriction. Welcome to our newsroom this morning at the People's Palace. The President of the Republic, His Excellency Ismail Omar Guelleh, sponsored the end of the week of the second sessions of International Day of Persons with Disability at the People's Palace, a day to raise awareness of the Djiboutian public opinion, a capital premise in order to raise public awareness on the rights of this branch of society. This year, the theme chosen is A Day for All, a theme that takes up the increasingly commonly accepted idea that disability must be part of the human condition, an idea that is essential to the promises made in the Sustainable Development Program for 2013 to leave no one behind. This day, which has its own banners, its symbols, so the participation of the plethora of ministers, diplomatic representatives, and international organizations. On his arrival, the President of the Republic, Ismail Omar Guelleh, was welcomed by the Prime Minister Abdul Qadir Kamil Mohammed and the Director of the National Agency for Disabled Persons, Duale Saeed Mahmoud. The number one of the Republic visit various stands of handicraft, but also paintings and drawings. The great hall of the People's Palace was at its height in a festive atmosphere. Once back home, the President received a standing ovations accompanied by applause. This day, rich in programs, began with the readings of the verses from the Holy Quran by young people from the EABC and CPA school, followed by song and plays. Finally, a short film, all reflecting the importance of this day. A presentation of the National Disability Strategy was given by Ms. Muna Abubakar. This strategy highlights a framework of responsibility with indicators common to all departments, acting transversally to achieve sustainable progress and transformations in the management of disability in all its diversity for an inclusive society. In other words, this strategy should serve as a basis for strengthening the links between people with disability and society in order to ensure that they are valued and respected for their dignity, rights, and points of view. It should also be noted that the commitment to the realizations of the rights of persons with disability is not only a matter of justice but an investment in a better common futures for our nation. The resident representative of the United Nations Development Programs in Djibouti, Ms. Fatima El-Sheikh, for her part commended the joint efforts of the National Agency for People with Special Need and the United Nations Program, while at the same time affirming the importance of the initiative to create this agency to defend the rights of people with special needs in Djibouti. In her speech on the occasions of the closing closing of the second session of the National Week of Persons with Disability, she referred to the strategy developed by the National Institute of Statistics in consultations with the government agencies, civil society organizations, and development partners, where all the needs and priority of persons with disability were listed. The resident representative of United Nations Development Programs in Djibouti took the opportunity to request the President of the Republic to continue efforts to improve the conditions of this important segment of society in order to achieve the national vision of the development by 2020. For his part, the head of state Ismail Omar Guelleh said, "I am taking part today in the closing of the second sessions of the National Disability Week, a week that not only promotes the rights and well-being of persons with disability in all areas of our society." Listen to the head of state.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulih al-amin. Sayyidina wa Habibina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Mesdames et messieurs, c'est avec un réel plaisir que je prends part aujourd'hui à la clôture de la deuxième édition de la Semaine nationale du handicap.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is with real pleasure that I'm taking part today in the closing of the second edition of National Disability Week, a week that only promotes the rights and well-being of persons with disabilities in all areas of our society, but also meets a fundamental requirement for equal opportunity. This is the ambition of our republic. Protecting the rights of people with special needs is a governmental challenge for a supportive society. With a comprehensive disability policy and breaking down barriers, it makes possible that what was once difficult to achieve in the past. Yes, even if these difficulties are still frequent, even if there are many situations of distress, society's view of disability has gradually improved. Yes, the time passed when the disabled person was kept locked up in the family secrecy. Yes, the wall of indifference, it is often the wall of selfishness that surrounded him or her, is beginning to come down. Because society has gradually become aware that disability in fact concerns each and every one of us, whether we were born with it or raised from illness or an accident. Disability is part of life. Ladies and gentlemen, among its achievements this year, the National Agency for Persons with Disabilities has, among other things, launched a vast biometric registration operation for persons with disabilities, which is aimed at overcoming the challenges posed by the definition of disability threshold in identification of persons with disabilities in a formal and institutionalized manner. It also conducted a national disability prevalence survey, which revealed that the national prevalence rate is 20.5%, a high rate given the size of our population. In addition, we have strengthened the legal framework to protect the rights of persons with disabilities by introducing a biometric card that will be used to identify the persons recognized by a toll gate as having a disability, but above all will facilitate access to a number of social rights and benefits.
All these subsidized schemes are intended to move forward methodically. Listen once again to the head of state.
Mesdames et messieurs, tous ces dispositifs subventionnés ont pour objectif d'avancer de manière méthodique.
Ladies and gentlemen, all these subsidized schemes are intended to move forward methodically. Our commitment is to find appropriate solutions to make our society a society that takes into account the needs of all its citizens, giving priority to the most vulnerable. For me, this second edition is not a simple celebration, but rather an ambition to bring together all the active forces towards a more inclusive Djibouti, a fairer Djibouti, which leaves no stone unturned. However, an inclusive society is obviously a society that is accessible to people with special needs, who can find their place in school, can find employment in companies, as well as in the civil service. But also the living environment. It must be adapted everywhere to their needs. We have certainly made progress in recent years. However, we are conscious and determined. We still have a long way to go. I call on the government as a whole to ensure that the question of a course is no longer introduced into political decisions, as so many times in the past, by subsidiary Disability must now become a real reflex of public action. It is therefore for more information, more efficiency, we are now going to set obligations of result. I would first of all like to pay a heartfelt tribute to parents and children with special needs, but above all I would like to assure them of our unconditional support. You are the central players and partners of choice for social services. Your child's psychological and physical development depends to a large extent on our ability to listen to and assimilate your child's needs, but also on your complete availability to accompany fathers and professionals in providing comprehensive care for your child. Finally, I cannot end my remarks without saluting the commitment and generosity of all those who work daily to defend the rights of all citizens. You represent a Djibouti that we love, a Djibouti of solidarity. I would like to tell you how proud I am to be able to now proceed with the deserved decoration. Thank you.
Before any polemic, it must be stressed that the disabled person, our son, our brothers, and one of our favorite relatives, listen to the head of state.
Before any polemic, it must be stressed that the disabled person, our son, our brother, and one of our favorite relatives, none of them wanted to become disabled, either as a result of an accident, an illness, and sometimes an innate disability. For the anecdote, I remember a young university professor called Wahib. He is no longer with us today. He had half of his body disabled. In spite of this, he did his primary education in Djibouti and was able to continue with his university studies in France. He came back to Djibouti to work. It is thanks to his mother and sister, who supported him for about 20 years, that he was able to reach this stage. This is certainly a typical example for dissimilar disabled people. It must be borne in mind that the state alone cannot meet all the needs in terms of disability. So I urge the Ministries of Health and Higher Education to set up a training unit to train specialized health assistants or auxiliaries in the field of disability support and assistance. On the other hand, it would be essential to train, here or outside the country, medical agents specialized in the field of education or assistance to so-called autistic children. These children, if properly assisted, will become geniuses capable of serving the country.
Sometimes we may wish to have a person fully cared for by a specialized agent. Listen for the last time to the head of state.
Sometimes we may wish to have a person fully cared for by a specialized agent. I am referring here to a young girl who is a student at the Daryl Center. This young girl is unable to walk and hold a pen, but otherwise she's a brilliant student in all disciplines. In spite of her two handicapped hands, there are young people born without arms and legs in the same center. These kinds of people need personalized and specialized assistance and support. Therefore, it would be more than desirable to train teachers or educators here or elsewhere who are able to satisfy these young people with disabilities with more than specialized needs, so that in the future they can ensure their substance and work for the development of their nations. This is a burden, an obligation that falls to all of us, to every citizen of our country. In fact, it is a national duty incumbent on all of us. We owe it to ourselves to open our hearts to our fellow citizens with disabilities, or to do so without stigmatizing them, but on the contrary by welcoming them with open arms. It is our duty, government and people alike, not to sideline them but to support them morally and physically at every moment of their existence. We must feel love, compassion and tenderness of our disabled fellow human beings. Here below and beyond, I wish that we can move forward as long as we are on this earth to support and help our disabled brothers and sisters. It has been a week rich in events of all kinds. I can see the director of the ANPH looking satisfied. As recently as last night, I recommended to the Minister of Budget to bail out the budget for the ANPH more than last year. All the needs of the ANPH must be met in financial terms without any restrictions. Thank you.
At the end of the official speeches, the President of the Republic, Ismail Omar Guelleh, handed over the specific equipment, the first biometric card, and the first key to the EOJ Foundation's housing for people with the special needs. On the occasions of this colorful ceremony, the head of state also decorate honorary personalities who have spared no effort for the development and the fight for the rights of the most needy people, who are the people with the special needs. These include the UNDP representative Fatima El Sheikh, the director of the multilateral relations at Foreign Affairs, Mr. Gele Idrissa, and Dr. Isa Abdi Bokorre, an ophthalmologist at Sheikh Barbala Hospital.
geesi hawlkaraa u kacay himilada wadaninimo aqoon reersanaa ku hantay hay-adana horumariyey hay-adana horumariyey
fikirkii hoggaasha hay-adda iyo asaaskeeda muddo dheer hirgelinteeda ku hamiyaye weeyaan
geesi hawlkaraa u kacay himilada wadaninimo aqoon reersanaa ku hantay hay-adana horumariyey hay-adana horumariyey
dhalinyaro habliyo wiilal maamulo uga hooseeya muddo gaaban hawlo fara badan hirgeliyeen hambalye mutaysteen
adeegyo hufan gobolada wakiilo uga hawlgala hebel baahi gaara leh mid kastaba halkuu joogo way kastaba garaacaya hubiyo uu hagarbaxa hubiyo uu hagarbaxa
An information and evaluation meeting on the Crédit Jeune Promoteur program financed by the United Nations Development Programme UNDP was held yesterday in the meeting room of the Caisse d'épargne de crédit de Djibouti, chaired by the Director General of the CPEC, Mr. Omar Ibrahim Omar. The meeting took place in the presence of the representative of United Nations Development Program in Djibouti, Fatima El Sheikh. This meeting also saw the participation of the senior banking supervision officers at the Central Bank of Djibouti, Mr. Malik Mohammed Garad, and Ms. Khadra Omar of the Djibouti Social Development Agency, Mr. Abdallah of the Guarantee Fund. The objective of this working meeting was to discuss ways and means of further consolidating the financial services of the CPEC, particularly the credit for young Djiboutian graduates. In a projection video, the General Directors of CPEC, Mr. Omar Ibrahim Omar, was able to present the testimonies of the young beneficiaries who were able to create income-generating activity through access to credit. The Technical High School of Gabon hosted yesterday afternoon the closing ceremony of trainings in computer graphics for graduates of technical education vocational training, including the baccalaureate AC, administration, accounting, and maintenance networks, installation, microcomputer, and Bac Pro A secretariat of the graduating class of 2019. The closing ceremony was attended by the Director General of the Technical Education and Vocational Training, Mr. Abdul Qadir Humada, and Director of the company Digital Dynamic Solutions Djibouti, Mr. Stan, the Director of Sectors Samash and Foresight, Mrs. Ni'ma Hassan Ismail, the Headmasters of the Technical High School of Gabon, Mr. Yasser Ali Abdo, took part in the ceremony. It should be remembered that this training started in March but was interrupted by the health crisis, which resumed in September. The selection of about 50 young baccalaureate holders, the training start complete. The trainees' curriculum gives them more chances in professional integrations by giving them an additional baggage in computer tools. More generally, during these 3 months of training, the aim was to enable participants to acquire a culture linked to the expressions of art and graphics, to prioritize information to make it attractive and pleasant to see, and above all, they integrate immediately into the professional environment through practice on the 3 basic software packages, namely DTP, Adobe Illustrator, Adobe Photoshop, and InDesign. In a brief intervention, the Director General of the Technical Education Vocational Training, Mr. Abdul Qadir Humada, encouraged and thanked the training participants. As part of the country's effort to fight COVID-19, the National Union of Djiboutian Women, in partnership with UNICEF, organized this morning at UNFD headquarters a training of trainees on techniques for transmitting COVID-19 prevention messages. This occasion saw the participation of the trainers for the Ministry of Health and UNICEF, as well as the many women who came to represent the different neighborhoods of the countries they represent. Objective of the days was to raise women's awareness on the importance of protecting themselves against COVID and to inform the participants on the different ways of transmitting the Quran, so that they in turn could raise awareness among women in their neighborhoods. A ceremony for the handing over of the protection equipment against COVID was organized this morning at Duda Wastewater's treatment plant as part of the effort to fight COVID. This event, which aims to support ONIADA in fight against and protect its agency, is part of the American-Djiboutian friendships and shows the strong relations between the two friendly countries. Materials were offered by the Deputy of the American Ambassador to Djibouti and AFRICOM for the benefit of ONIAD agents. The equipment was officially handed over to Mr. Ali Yusuf, Director of Technical Exploitations of Water, which is in turn indicate the usefulness of the latter to support the national response, specifically to support the agents of ONIAD, and this by the number 2 of the American Embassy, where all the equipment for the protections against the COVID is worth a total values of $50,000. This ceremony was attended by Mr. Ali Yusuf Ali Geddi, the Director of the Technical Operations and the Deputy of the American Ambassador to Djibouti, as well as officials of the American Embassy and National Offices of Water Sanitation. In her speech, Ms. Andrea Thomas-Zewicz, the Deputy U.S. Ambassador to Djibouti, affirmed America's determination to support Djibouti in its effort to fight against COVID-19, welcoming the existing fraternal relations between the two friendly countries. For his part, Mr. Ali Yusuf Geddi, the Director of the Technical Exploitations of Water, expressed on behalf of all the agents of ONIADA his sincere thanks for all your efforts, commitment, and determinations for the maintenance and continuity of health services, as evidenced by the American Embassy in Djibouti and Africa in order to fight against COVID-19 and work in this context with the Djiboutian government in its fight against COVID-19. The gendarmes of the Road Safety Brigade of PK 12 raided a restaurant at PK 13 in which illegal trafficking in diesel fuel was reported. During the search, the gendarmes discovered in front of the restaurant an Ethiopian tanker truck filled with gasoil. The drivers of this vehicle had diverted more than 5,000 liters of its load, which were subsequently powered into the 10,000 liters drums and 2 tanks of 1,500 liter capacity each. To conceal them, the smugglers dug a hole in the floor of the restaurant where they buried the tanks to escape the vigilance of the gendarmes. It should be noted that they had slightest spark. The area was in danger at catching live fire. During this operation, 5 people, including the owners of the restaurant, 2 Ethiopian truck drivers, and fugitives, were arrested and taken into the custody. At the end of the investigation, the suspect will be brought to justice to answer for their actions. We have just learned with dismay and sadness that the death of the late Haji Ibrahim Roble Amir alias Hussein Burale Adar in Dirdwa, Ethiopia, late yesterday afternoon following the hospitalization is the late Haj Ibrahim Roble Amir, born in 1946 in Dirdawa, was for a long time a well-known trader in the business circles of both Djibouti and Dirdawa, and through his careers he was a member of the circle of the highly respected ulemas of the city of Duridawa, while being nowadays among the wise men constantly solicited and consulted by August Mustafa Muhammad Ibrahim, his committee of Gandaha. The late Haji Ibrahim Roble Amir was highly appreciated for his generosity and his deep humanism for his fellow men. The deceased left behind him 24 children and about 14 grandchildren. The late Haji Ibrahim Roble Amir was the father-in-law of our colleagues at RTD, Ramadan Musa Jama, the general management of RTD staff, offer their sincere condolence to the family of the deceased. May Allah, the Very High, welcome him in his eternal paradise. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. For the international scene, England is confining itself and reverting to regional restrictions. England is emerging Wednesday from a 4-week lockdown to return to a regional approach that Prime Minister Boris Johnson hopes to lift in the spring, thanks to the combined actions of vaccines and mass screening. It was the second containment suffered by England, designed to curb a second wave of coronavirus in the country. Most bereaved in Europe by the pandemic, more than 59,000 deaths for 1.6 million positive cases. It is being replaced at least until February, but a 3-level alert system is imposing local restrictions according to the severity of the epidemic. We must be realistic and we must accept that there is not yet a vaccine in the deployment phase, which alone will allow a return to a normal life, Boris Johnson explained Tuesday in the House of Commons, the lower house of Parliament. Boris Johnson hopes that the generalizations of screening combined with vaccinations, which will allow the countries to emerge from the long tunnels of restrictions in the spring. Residents, you can now meet up to a maximum of 6 people, and outside only if their region is affected by the highest level of alert. This is it for the news. Thanks for watching us.